and the Hammer will undoubtedly get fuel and possibly tires for that 33X racing machine.
Let's kind of reset what is going on now with the actual lead of the race. Definitely, we know the leader on lap 191 here is Wild Bill Tunney Jr., taking advantage of the unfortunate accident regarding Rodney Sizemore and Bruce Tunney at the corner number 3. Second place is a battle between the 21 car, Bobby Douthit and George Sutton. We know Douthit down either 2 or 3 laps to the leader from those couple of spins, plus the number 94 incident with him in corner number 4. George Sutton had lost a lap prior to the yellow from a spin, and then we saw Sutton peel off. He has now a full tank of fuel, possibly some fresh Goodyear rubber underneath, and he's in a good spot. He will not have to spot, barring any other major catastrophes to his machine, the rest of this race. So George Sutton has put himself in a very good position.
Well, it's like any other kind of racing, Jonathan. Obviously, the laps that you run under yellow just enable you to have great fuel economy. Another driver that took advantage of this extended break that we're having is also Fred Bear Jr. So Fred Bear Jr. rejoins the race as well in car number 94, and the fans giving Bruce Tunney a hand as Bruce is able to walk to the ambulance under his own power, and we certainly hope that that is a good sign for Bruce Tunney.
And Jay Baker, this could be something, if that injury may be serious or unserious enough, plus the damage to his race car, don't forget, we've got one more big race next weekend and for the Blossom Chevrolet regular season racing for the Redline Graphics late models. With Bruce, he's within striking distance of his 4th consecutive track championship here. RJ Norton, he wants to keep his car relatively unscathed throughout because all these cars will be back next week, next Saturday night here at the Blossom Chevy Speedrome for a big night of racing for the 1-hour endurance race.
Point well taken, but I will tell you, Jonathan, that I'm going to guess any one of these drivers would say, equipment versus a world championship, I'll take the world championship. So you're right, a lot of these guys throwing caution to the wind. Certainly the comment, anything can happen, sounds just like the cliche that it really is. But Jonathan, we saw that tonight where a driver that we felt, well, we're almost, frankly, sending the plate out from the trophy to have it engraved, Bruce Tunney. Bruce Tunney ran into a couple of problems right in a row. Bruce Tunney's race, frankly, came to an end when he came into contact with Rodney the Rocket Sizemore. Sizemore's race might have come to an end when he came into contact at the crossover. So, like dominoes, sometimes an event happens, and the trickle-down theory is that one event affects another event. The net result, we have Bruce Tunney apparently out of this race and actually had to take an ambulance ride. So it's a situation that nobody would have wanted. Certainly the pre-race favorite. I certainly, after the 1-hour mark, would have said, call Vegas, put the house mortgage on it, because he was very, very dominant.
As we clear the 41C car of Mike Kane off, I've been keeping an eye on our special guest from California. Jesse James has been running a relatively good pace for his first rookie excursion into the World Championship. Jesse James has been doing a pretty good job. We're glad to have him here, ladies and gentlemen. Jesse James from Monster Garage in that beautifully prepared 666 car.
Tell you what, Jesse James, big celebrity factor. He wanted to do some figure 8 racing, contacted the Speedrome and said, I want to go racing. Obviously, it's a pleasure to have somebody with as much national importance as Jesse has to be part of our event tonight. Now, this, of course, is a very serious auto race. We have 1 lap to go as the Speedrome pace truck pulls off. But Jesse certainly giving us that celebrity factor and has acquitted himself very well. Your restart leader will be Wild Bill Tunney, car number 4. Wild Bill Tunney, keep an eye on car number 4 as we anticipate a green flag racing experience, and we get it. The green flag flies once again at the Speedrome. Wild Bill Tunney takes off into the lead as cars now fighting to get up to speed. Everybody looking for a way to slot themselves in.
Oh, and corner number 3, Steve the Bulldozer spin down
their way through the crossover, and they do. Doug Gregg looked like he had to take extreme evasive action to avoid that problem at the crossover. At the head of the field, there he is, car number 4, Wild Bill Tunney. We still have motionless cars over the north end of the racetrack. Bob Foster Sr. motioning to the Speedrome crew. I believe Bob Foster Sr. having trouble getting the 57 refired. So Bob Foster Sr. having some problems in car number 57.
Well, we see we've completed lap number 200, and just within a couple of laps we will know what the second and third place cars are. But another caution, Bobby Douthit may get a lap back here. He'll at least be side by side on the restart with Wild Bill Tunney Jr. and would love to get one of his laps that he's lost to the leader. As we are approaching the halfway mark of this race, Jay, we are at 1 hour and 24 minutes completed, 1 hour and 36 remaining, and it's totally still up in the air. I really can't say that even with a 2-lap lead, Bill Tunney Jr. safe. He still has that fuel stop to make. He will have to come off the track and lose at least 1, if not 2 laps. While Bill Tunney Jr. obviously would have already pitted for fuel if he was going to stop this time. So his strategy may be to get more laps on the field and then make his fuel stop under another caution and be like a lap lead over any second and third place cars.
Well, I think that is a distinct possibility because, once again, there's a lot of figuring that comes into this race, and that's why we have the excellent scoring crew that we have. But, Jonathan, you're so much better at this than I. I believe there is only one car on the lead lap, and it is Wild Bill Tunney, so he is his own leader of the field.
That's correct. Wild Bill Tunney in the lead. Second place, we are giving to Bobby Douthit, Bobby the Big Dog Douthit, definitely in second place. We're going to go with him being 2 laps down to the field, 2 laps down. So
how about that? Bobby Douthit, 2 laps down. He's the runner-up. So
if he can get around Tunney here on the restart, and then there'll be another caution, they'll go all the way to the rear of the field, and so many people, so many things can happen that you can basically almost gain half the field back on a restart here if you were a really fast car.
Well, as Jonathan wisely pointed out, you can be several laps down in this race and still do just fine. You can be several laps down and have that deficit turn into a world championship. But it does enter into the chess game that is the world championship. Take a look at this. You have a guy who's on his own lead lap all by himself. Then you got Bobby Douthit at least 2 laps down, and we'll get a final computation on that. As Jonathan said, Dale Jarrett style, you could be a couple laps down and still win the Brickyard. That's what's happened in the past. So being 2 laps down here at the World Championship might not be the end of the world. I would have told you certainly earlier, Bobby Douthit looked like he was having one each of every kind of problem you can have. In fact, he had a big coming together with Fred Bear Jr. that just made Fred Bear get out of the car and start talking to the safety crews. So that gives you an idea of just where Bobby Douthit has been and now where he finds himself, Jonathan. So once again, there's a lot of excitement built into the World Figure 8 Championship, and we've seen it tonight where a guy who is absolutely dominant running away with this race, and then what happens, Jonathan? Finds himself behind a crashed car and actually has to walk to the ambulance tonight. So a very sad situation. Fans of Tunney's tonight have to really be heavy-hearted as we saw a very dominant performance, at least for the early part of this race from Bruce Tunney. 200 laps plus in the books, Jonathan. 204 laps of intense racing action here at the Speedrome. We are approaching the halfway point, so many things coming together here. This race will have a very exciting conclusion, and the stage is being set for that right now.
1 lap to go to the green flag and the resumption of the Marion K. Spices World Championship.
Greg is another example of a driver with ASA racing experience along with Fred Bear. Doug Gregg had a whole bunch of problems too, and Doug Gregg finds himself running in 4th spot. We'd like to thank our scoring crew here tonight, up against a lot of adversity, keeping track of all these cars as we expect this time around. The pace quickens at the head of the field. And I guess they must have thrown a signal to each other because Bobby Douthit, while it looks like he takes the lead, actually what he does is get himself in position to get a lap back.
Now Bobby the Big Douthit just one lap down to the race. Bill Tunney Jr. obviously does not want it to be that easy for him. Tunney knows he needs to keep the strategy of putting as many laps on the field as possible before his pit stop, and therefore not losing the lead as he makes his pit stop. The field as Christopher Green almost plows into the leader.
Wild Bill Tunney, car number 4, is your race leader. Douthit is the runner-up. Douthit is in runner-up position, but 2 laps down in this event. There he is, your race leader. Now with some clear track in front of him, he'll have traffic at the crossover. There's a guy who rejoined. Oh, unbelievable.
There it is.
Your race leader comes into contact with Steve the Bull Durham. Incredible. Car number 4 makes contact with Steve the Bull Durham, and he gets underway.
It doesn't look like there seems to be any major problems with the Wild Bill machine, but definitely Douthit has gained a lap, and now over a half a lap. He's only 1.5 laps down to Wild Bill. We'll see if there may be some toe-in, toe-out caster camera problems for the Moore machine.
How about Wild Bill Tunney makes major contact, gets underway, and as Jonathan pointed out, his speed seems unabated as Wild Bill Tunney is still your leader, but he made solid contact with Steve the Bull Durham. Durham remains out on the track as far as I can tell, and Wild Bill Tunney still remains out on the track as well. So Wild Bill still hammered down, still keeps on racing. I take that back. Durham got hit hard enough. I believe Durham left the race.
I believe so.
So, wow. And a piece of Christopher Green's car just got peeled off by Fred Bear Jr. So Fred Bear Jr. trailing some debris, both from his race car and that of Christopher Green's car, 52G.
Sparks flying on the racetrack. We can imagine after the race how much sparks might fly. But nonetheless, Wild Bill Tunney Jr. seems to be none the worse for wear after that small amount of contact with Steve the Bull Durham. Wild Bill Tunney Jr. on lap number 214. We have completed the halfway distance of this event.
You know, I'm not real sure that was slight contact, Jonathan.
Well,
I don't want to... Wow, George Sutton. It's... Douthit and McMurtry make heavy contact. Douthit and McMurtry, very, very heavy contact at the crossover.
Douthit gets away. Maybe some rear-end damage. We'll see. He gets back underway. He's going to pit now. Douthit going to the pit area. So all that hard work goes for naught now. He will lose another lap to pass Douthit or to Tunney. And now that's probably going to be 4 or 5 laps as they check out that machine.
That's why we've got scorers to help us keep track of all this. Plenty of race action has meant that literally all of our leaders have had some type of exciting event. And exciting for the fans, maybe not so exciting for the drivers. So Curtis McMurtry, reigning world champion. Bobby Douthit, the big dog. Douthit was in second when he made the contact, and Douthit chose that moment to pit. We'll see how this all plays out. We've said that George Sutton certainly was in a position to at least tactically be in very good shape. Sutton now is exhibiting some damage to the number 6. We don't know if that's superficial damage or some type of damage that may affect the performance later of car number 6. We are scoring Sutton, by the way, number 2 on the racetrack. Number 2 on the racetrack. As you see, the leader is still Wild Bill, car number 4. So Wild Bill in 4, Sutton in 6, and put Doug Gregg now in 3rd spot because of Douthit's collision and then subsequent visit to the pits. So Jonathan, the action is happening from every possible angle, and I don't know about you, but if you didn't have scorers and a timer, it would be tough to keep up with the on-track and off-track action at this event.
It's unbelievable as the 220th lap comes and hits the the books here in the history of the World Championship. Wild Bill Tunney Jr. holding a small advantage, a 2 to 3 lap advantage over George Sutton. We don't know how many, maybe George got a lap back in Wild Bill's mishap that he had about 4 laps ago.
Yeah, we'll double check on that. As we said, Sutton put himself in pretty good position because he was one of the early guys able to dive into the pits during the Bruce Tunney incident. So when he dove into the pits, we think that at least on paper set himself up very nicely for the exciting conclusion of this event. When I say exciting conclusion, we're only halfway there. So I don't want to, it's the old, you don't want to put the cart in front of the horse because we still have plenty of racing action in front of us. Some of these guys have had a lot of things happen to them. One of them being Bobby Doubt that's been involved in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 incidents on this track, Jonathan. He found himself in a collision, then found himself leaving the track to go to the pits to get that attention that his car needed. Chris Green just rejoined us in car number 22, but Green appears very slow, and now Green picks up the speed. So we've kept an eye on Wild Bill Tunney, car number 4. Wild Bill is our race leader. Now Wild Bill has had a number of incidents on the track as well, including very heavy contact with Steve the Bull Durham. It's a testament to how tough Wild Bill is and how tough car number 4 is. He's managed to keep on and pretty much run the pace that he's run most of this race, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Wild Bill Tunney here wanting to win a world championship in his 25th attempt. I don't think there is anyone else who has run as many world championships as he has. And Danny Turner almost goes into the wall as he and Norton get together, but nonetheless, none the worse for wear. Will continue racing as we'll see Wild Bill put a lap on Norton here. RJ Norton will go another lap down to the leader, Wild Bill Tunney Jr.
And just inches away from that incident involving Danny Turner was once again Fred Bear Jr. So Fred Bear has been in the thick of a lot of near misses on this racetrack. In fact, it'd be interesting to get a lap count on Fred Bear because at one point Fred was actually out of the car and conversing with the Speedrome safety crew.
Trouble in turn number 3. Donnie Sloan gets hit behind by Wes Spillers. Sloan now stuck on the marker tire. We'll see if he can get going. We may have to go under caution, and this might be Bill Tunney's break.
Sloan is actually able to back away from the marker tire, and he'll rejoin right in front of Doug Gregg. So Gregg, who finds himself in 3rd, finds Sloan rejoining in front of him. Everybody through at the crossover. And it has been a very busy place all evening long. Keeping an eye on your race leader, car number 4. It'll be very interesting to see exactly at what point Wild Bill Tunney will have to pit. At some point, car number 4 will undoubtedly have to dive into the pits for a drink of fuel and possibly some tires. But Wild Bill is setting an absolutely torrid pace, wants to stay out, put as many laps on the books as he can. Ronnie Rigdon, car number 19, one of our alternates having some problems. And coming together, Jeremy the Frog. That is the Frog coming together with Mark Morello. So Mark Morello, the surprise, frankly, of this event, Mark Morello was one of our top 10 qualifiers and started 6th for this race, or started 7th actually, so Morello has been quite a surprise, and now turned around at the crossover.
Danny Smith.
That looks like Danny Smith.
We got a car going the wrong way. We got another car stopped in Ronnie Rigdon, another car stopped in Ben Tunney, and the race continues nonetheless as we see in the north of the a innumerable amount of cars. I don't even think I'm saying a word, Jay Baker.
Well, you just go ahead, as I've always said, Jonathan, do what I do. Just make up a word. It'll certainly suit the situation. But I think what you were getting at is that an amazing number of cars have been going through that crossover as Morello and Sloan come together. Both drivers continue, but Sloan definitely letting Morello know that, hey, he was right behind him. Crossover traffic very heavy, as Jonathan said. Fred Bear Jr. narrowly missing Greg Stute at the crossover. Jonathan, we have some updates, and I'll let you pass those along as we watch Wild Bill Tunney put another lap on the books.
As we suspected, Jay Baker, Wild Bill Tunney, your leader after 235 laps. George Sutton is 2 laps down, narrowly missing Doug Craig in the crossover, who is, ironically, 6 laps down unofficially, and Wild Bill and Mark Tunney almost get together in the crossover.
Wow.
The top 3 in the 4th place car unofficially right now, we have the reigning world champion, Curtis McMurtry.
So McMurtry, who had a lot of trouble early on, we've always said McMurtry, he's sneaky, Jonathan. He's one of those guys that he wins by being sneaky.
And now corner number 4, we got John Laval making a donut in a car that we can't quite see who it is. Now we do see it's David Lee Byrne getting back underway. And in the south of the track, Jeff Shackelford's very slow. So action from all angles and all sides here at the Blossom Chevy Speedrome.
You betcha. And that crossover, a very busy place. Some of these guys just choose to completely come to a stop, both good and bad. And Curtis McMurtry, we talked about him, and McMurtry got spun because of the fact that traffic's moving at various speeds. So when those guys stop at the crossover, sometimes they do it to avoid collisions. They actually end up creating a collision, as McMurtry not only got spun, but check it out, is motionless on the racetrack.
Well, all that happened because 4C car Calvin Crane bolted through the straightaway in between 2 cars, and that startled Danny Smith, who got into the rear of Curtis McMurtry.
So McMurtry looks like he is motionless on the racetrack. They'll eventually throw the yellow flag for safety's sake. And keep an eye on car number 4. Will car number 4 take this opportunity to dive into the pits? There it was. That's exactly what we were waiting for.
Your leader goes to the pits, Jay Baker, and that was what he was waiting for. The field window is open. He catches the yellow, and this should be a relatively quick yellow, as we should just be able to push off the car of Curtis McMurtry.
Wild Bill's crew undoubtedly ready for him on the other side of that wall. There are no radio links between the crew chiefs and the drivers, but certainly his crew was very aware that at any moment Wild Bill Tunney was going to jump into the pits. And look at Wild Bill's crew, NASCAR style, Jonathan.
Absolutely.
Gets the number 4 back out onto this racetrack, presumably. Well, we know for sure that he fueled, and presumably with some new Goodyear tires. So car number 4 doing an amazing job. That G&M Trucking pit crew and Remax Advantage crew certainly were very hard at work, Jonathan. I'm going to imagine that there was a flurry of activity in the pit stall for the number 4 machine, and an impressive display.
Obviously something locked up in the rear end of the 5 machine. That must have been too much damage when that hit happened. Locked up the rear end, maybe stuck in gear, can't quite get it enough to tow it from the rear
if you look,
of the car, Curtis McMurtry.
If you look closely, Jonathan, the rear wheels are deranged on the number 5 machine. The driver probably now will just order out for Rolino's Pizza, as it may be the final call for the number 5 machine. That baby's going back to the shop. A very frustrated reigning World Figure 8 champion, Curtis McMurtry behind the wheel. It just was not McMurtry's night. He certainly gave it a go. Was our 9th fastest qualifier. Qualified certainly in that group of 20. He was locked in. The reigning world champion. We expected a lot from him tonight. Unbelievable competition levels. Certainly, I don't think anybody in this field could have adequately prepped for what both the Tunneys have done early on in this race. The amazing charge of Bruce Tunney, and then the absolutely spectacular charge of Wild Bill Tunney. Now, Wild Bill, this is a story and a half as we get our scoring crew. We've been injecting our scoring crew with vitamin B12 all night, and they are going to give us a supercharged update here in just a little bit. Right now, officially on the scoreboard, Jonathan, we still have Wild Bill Tunney in the first position. So as you can see clearly under the yellow, that allowed him to dive into the pits, come back and rejoin this race as the race leader. We are going to get complete updates on all the scoring, as there is always a tiny bit of confusion during this part of the race. Right now we are at the hour 15 mark, or at least drawing near to that hour and 15 mark. So we have another 75 minutes of racing action. At this point of the race, with all the action, the final 75 minutes of this race has got to feel to these guys like a 50-lap sprint to the finish. Certainly, we complicate things by making them go through the figure eight. As Jonathan pointed out, we get 450 laps of this race, which is very, very conceivable. That means that the leader will have to have successfully negotiated the crossover some 900 times. We have also found out, Jonathan, that the leader maybe not always has successfully negotiated the crossover, as we've seen very heavy contact from our race leader. He made heavy contact with Steve the Bull Durham. It is a testament to just how tough car number 4 is. Car number 4 and the driver took a shot enough to knock most cars out of the race, knock most drivers out of the race. And it's like that Timex watch you always hear about, Jonathan. It takes a licking and keeps on ticking.
That's right.
So car number 4, as we get ready for this restart, the green flag flies once again at your speedrome. And incidents already spun around. That is Wes Spillers.
And Bobby Dalton comes to a stop in the north section of the racetrack.
So Bobby Dalton with some real problems. We don't know what's been happening with Dalton tonight. My guess is Dalton's got some stories to tell you tonight. If Dalton told the story he'd begin with, it's one of those evenings.
We just saw a quick reappearance of Don Eastlick back on the racetrack, but he darted back off. Amazing that car even rolled.
Wow, I tell you what, Eastlick, all the body panels are off the car. Jonathan, look at the traffic we've got here at the south end of the racetrack as everybody piled into turn number 1, 3 wide, and they all came out successfully.
Well, if we get another caution flag here with an hour and 30 minutes to go, we'll see George Sutton go back around and only be 1 lap behind the leader instead of about 1.5 laps behind the leader right now.
Well, I think it's a very interesting chess match that we're watching. Your race leader is Wild Bill Tunney. He's mired down in traffic, Jonathan. So as he circulates in traffic, so does the number 6 of George Sutton. Wild Bill Tunney knows it's absolutely imperative to keep racking up the mileage in this race.
Oh, and he makes contact with David Lee Byrne, left front to right rear contact, but he gets around him. No harm, no foul.
So Wild Bill Tunney, once again, that could have been disastrous, but Wild Bill Tunney finds himself in the catbird seat, still in the lead of this race, and still plenty of speed in the number 4 machine. So no matter how hard he hits that car, and no matter who he hits, he is still able to make progress.
It seems that maybe all those things that happen, it makes you think it may be Wild Bill's night.
Well, you got to wonder, certainly Wild Bill Tunney, one of our aces in the deck of cards. We knew that if it weren't for Bruce Tunney, Wild Bill Tunney would have been the ace of spades. So you got to take a look at a guy who has track champion written all over him. He has not racked up the championships like his brother has, but I've got to tell you, ounce for ounce, pound for pound, I don't think that you would ever say that Wild Bill Tunney is any less of a racer than Bruce Tunney, and Bruce Tunney was the unabashed favorite going into this race.
Jay, unofficially with the 250 lap score sheets in, we see that George Sutton is now on the lead lap, but he is on the tail end of the lead lap, and now only a straightaway distance separate Wild Bill Tunney and George Sutton as big crossover traffic happens.
So you raise a very good point, Jonathan. As we said, we wanted to see how this all spilled out. What this means is Sutton has tactically put himself in a very good position, but who could have ever figured 2 factors, how fast Wild Bill has been and how quickly his pit crew got that number 4 back out onto the track. So Wild Bill Tunney is definitely in that position right now. But you know something? A full hour and 11 minutes remain in this race.
I can't believe we've almost gone 2 hours of competition already in this Marion K. Spices World Championship, and still a very big number of cars. Freddie Bear gets into Jeremy Miller coming out of 4. Miller spins out. while. He'll rejoin the race.
Miller, having all kinds of trouble avoiding the crossover, decided, hey, I'll just go around one more time. So Jeremy the Frog Miller finds himself mired deep down in the field, now running for pride. Certainly Jeremy Miller would have been one of the drivers early on that we consider one of our out-of-town favorites. And how about Bobby Big Dog Dowd? That, we haven't talked about him for a while, Jonathan, but he still remains motionless in the center of this racetrack. He's in a safe position so far as a figure eight goes, but how about the laps unfolding around him? Bobby Douthit certainly has to be another driver filled with disappointment, as we thought for sure car number 21 was another heavy favorite.
Of course, Douthit missed last year's race. Really wanted to put on a good show and a good performance for the 2003 edition of this World Championship. And now, in the north end of the track, Donnie Sloan and Ricky the Kid Dietz seem to be hooked together on the middle marker tire.
Yep, Sloan and Dietz get hooked up and literally are finding a hard time getting unhooked, as Sloan now trying to get around him. Looks like Dietz actually is not under power right now, but Dietz is not necessarily in a precarious spot in the track as he's just inside that marker tire. And we have a spin.
Well, I'm just barricking. I could have sworn for a second that was George Sutton, but...
see, when there's a spin on the track, Jonathan, and you just go, oh, it's just Bear again.
Speaking of Sutton, he is now being hounded by the leader, Bruce Tunney. Sutton want to stay on that lead lap and get a caution so he can regain the tail of the field and have a chance to win this race.
Well, Jonathan, as you know, if you've watched any monster movies, you have to keep killing the monster. And if you're Wild Bill Tunney, what you want to do is put every competitor a lap down. Though of interest, not only is Sutton right in front of him, but look at the traffic.
And Sutton and LaValle get together. Sutton keeps it going straight. Unbelievable. And now Tunney goes under the middle marker tire to put a lap down on Sutton.
That was the patented Tunney move, and we saw it as Tunney before has always used that to his advantage. The rules allow you to duck under that middle marker tire, and that is the patented Tunney move.
And we do go yellow for the motionless machine of Dietz at the north end middle marker tire. Will go under caution. Unfortunately for George Sutton, it comes a lap too late.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. We tried to keep this thing going. We want to keep the race going as long as we can, but every once in a while, as you said, when you finally get those motionless cars, you want to err on the side of safety.
After 267 laps, a quick rundown of the top four or so. We do have Wild Bill Tunney Jr., your leader. Second place, 1 lap down, unofficially, is George Sutton. Unofficially, 5 laps down in third is Doug Gregg. And in fourth place, an incredible run by the out-of-towner Danny Smith. He is in fourth place, 8 laps down.
It would look at this point that it is Wild Bill Tunney's race to lose at this standpoint, as he's been absolutely dominant. As Jonathan and I have pointed out, as we've seen time and time again, a 29-cent race car part can break and strand an otherwise $35,000 race car. We're going to anticipate the green flag, and the green flag flies once again. And Wild Bill Tunney gets a very nice start, gets a jump out in front of everybody. He's got clear track in front of him. So Wild Bill, right behind him is George Sutton. Now you'd like to think, boy, all Sutton's got to do is pass and he's the leader. Doesn't quite work out that way, as Sutton now is about a lap down. Christopher Green has stopped at the crossover. Let's see if he gets going, and he does. Certainly it's when you stop altogether that sometimes causes a problem. Sloan is in the same situation, stopped at the crossover. Here comes your race leader and the runner-up. Sutton has some superficial damage to the rear wings of his car. We don't think that will affect the number 6. The number 6 has run an absolutely fantastic race tonight. George Sutton ran every race. George Sutton ran it by the books. George Sutton did everything right.
And Rodney Sizemore rejoined the race and right into the turn one while he got it moving again, unfortunately for him, and the race continues.
I think Sizemore definitely has some handling problems in car number 51. So after that contact, Sizemore's car has never been the same. So a tough break for your pole sitter, Rodney Sizemore, who's been behind the wall having that car worked on. It is absolutely not the race car it was prior to that collision at the crossover. Bill Tunney on his own lead lap. I don't know if we've coined that phrase yet here at the Speedrome, but his own lead lap, Jonathan. Think it over. Wild Bill Tunney, as George Sutton says, maybe now's a good time, Wild Bill, for me to get that lap back. We knew that Wild Bill would want to keep the pressure on. The sportsman says, let him go by. Wow, look at that traffic.
Scott Settles get together with, Donnie Garrett is the second, gets airborne for a second. Donnie slow, now Settles and Laval are stuck together. They get unstuck.
Yeah, Laval and Settles come together, and everyone is away and happy, and that's good news. There was extreme traffic at the crossover, and that's why Garrigus got caught up. The rear wheels of Garrigus' car actually up in the air, but Garrigus able to continue in car number 77. Wild Bill Tunney, still your race leader, car number 4. He's at the crossover.
He gets the brakes and Sutton gets his lap back.
Unbelievable, though. The most important thing is that Wild Bill Tunney avoided major contact at the crossover, because that's what was going to happen.
But you got to think, though, those flat spots on those tires do not help the handling of that racing machine one bit.
Absolutely not. Wild Bill Tunney had to get on the brakes, and now he's back around Sutton as they get around the slower car of Laval. So, an absolutely amazing display from Wild Bill Tunney. Checks up, Sutton passes him, then just repasses him as if it were no big thing. Crossover traffic for Wild Bill Tunney. Tunney, if I could give him any advice right now, you might need to be a little more careful at the crossover, Jonathan, because that has been the one element of his race that he's had a little bit of trouble. He's had a little bit of trouble controlling his contact at the crossover. Despite having contact on a number of occasions, that's a pretty clean-looking racing machine. That is arguably one of the better-looking cars, and that car has had major contact.
Oh, and he had a whole checkup for Jeff Heiser. There was almost contact there.
I'll tell you what, there is not going to be anything left of Wild Bill's tires. If he continues on the pace he is, he'll pull into victory lane on ribbons. He is giving those Goodyear tires a workout, and it's a testament to that Goodyear tire technology. They're Tunney tested. They should put that in their advertising, because the Tunney torture test in car number 4 goes on as Wild Bill carves his way through traffic. Right in front of him now, that is Danny Turner and Chris Green.
Very dangerous position to be in right now for Wild Bill Tunney Jr. Being behind that traffic, you can see them bumping and banging with each other, just competing, racing, trying to gain as many laps as possible to have the best finish that they can. And Wild Bill seems to perform flawlessly through the traffic, but you never know what will happen.
Well, the good thing, Jonathan, is I think once the drivers look up and, Sutton makes big contact with Wild Bill, as once again Laval looking the wrong way. That car, I think, actually could be driven in either direction, Jonathan. I'm not sure. It's very, well, appropriately enough, it's from Florida. It's shaped like a boat. So Laval is underway. Look at the traffic in this pack right here. A huge pack of traffic through the crossover, a number of cars running together on this racetrack. Wild Bill Tunney, still your race leader. He's trying to get around Green and Dangerous Danny Turner, and Sutton now pulls alongside. As we pointed out, Sutton would really love to get that lap back, and he'd like to build up some distance between himself and Wild Bill.
Jay, wouldn't it be amazing if these cars were on the same lap? We would be having side-by-side racing with an hour remaining here at the World Championship, the Mary Kay Spices World Championship. 1 hour remaining next time by.
And that just sets up a 1-hour sprint to the finish line as Wild Bill uses that patented Tunney maneuver, ducks under the marker tires, and now is set to put Chris Green and Christopher Green running side by side on the track. So Tunney is putting more traffic, even more laps down, multiple laps down, as Tunney carves through this field. Tunney now by both greens. Tunney has done an absolutely remarkable job in traffic, and frankly, he's been in contact with half the cars in the field. There's some black paint on everyone's car. that has apparently caused no problems for Wild Bill. Wild Bill has tossed the mirror and thrown it out of the car. He's hit every car on the track, and yet he continues to lead this race with absolute reckless abandon. Wild Bill Tunney through the crossover, through traffic. It makes no difference. The good news is that when drivers see Wild Bill coming, they are giving him some racing room. So the absolute good news is that Wild Bill is able to make some progress through this traffic by the fact that there's a lot of great sportsmanship for Wild Bill Tunney in the number 4 machine.
Always the last hour of this race turns into really a struggle of survival because the guys are getting tired, the drivers' forearms are aching, screaming in pain with every twist and turn of the wheel. Their legs from braking and accelerating are starting to cramp up as well. Their heart rates are accelerated now. They've been accelerated for over 2 hours. Definitely fatigue begins to be a factor. And when fatigue becomes a factor, then judgments start to become less, what's the word I'm looking for? Judgments are less...
they're less good.
Because, after all, we've been working for 2 hours as well. The vocabulary's starting to suffer ourselves.
Well, it's just like the heroic lack of judgment that Jonathan used when he decided to work with me this evening. Lots of action at the crossover. That is Morello through. Mark Tunney is right there in car number 17, Dangerous Danny Turner. We have a similar situation. David Lee Bird is motionless at the north end of the racetrack. Rigdon is pulled up, and that is George the Hammer Stewart, car number 33.
I thought I saw a big lot of tires, engine smoke, but it was just tire smoke of him accelerating.
Yeah, I think Stewart has been in the pit lane already, and Stewart was originally one of those guys that had run in the top 10, but Stewart now, I think, enough laps down, racing just for pride. So Stewart, early on a player in this game, now he's been reduced to being a pawn in this game. Most of these guys have become pawns for one man and one man only. The wild one, Wild Bill Tunney, as Laval gets turned around again. Laval
spun right into George Sutton. Unbelievable. Now Laval's in a precarious place right there, the crossover. Now the whole field is going to be coming up on him. Who's going to miss him?
Laval, incredible tonight. He's seen a lot of this track from pointing in the wrong direction. Still your race leader, Wild Bill Tunney. Living up to the moniker tonight is Wild Bill has taken every prisoner on the playing field. Wild Bill Tunney, with every turn, every lap, putting multiple cars, multiple laps down. So Wild Bill Tunney has been on a charge that has to be seen to be believed. Fans, we're so glad you joined us tonight for this 2003 27th Annual World Figure 8 Championship. It has lived up to its billing as the absolute dominance continues from Wild Bill Tunney. Tunney has put a hurt on this unprecedented field of 28, the fastest 28 figure 8 drivers in the world, and Wild Bill Tunney's having his way.
Unbelievable. Just 2 laps ago, there were 8 to 10 cars between George Sutton and Wild Bill. Now George Sutton's right on the tail of the leader, 1 lap down.
Well, I'll tell you what, those two have been working on each other all night long as Sutton basically just used Tunney as his brakes as he headed into the north end of the racetrack. So Tunney's race car, I will tell you, if and when Bruce Tunney wins this race, I'll tell you the person he should thank is the fabricator of car number 4. That car, Jonathan, has held together through every possible scrape. Car number 4 has been battered and bruised, but it has never been knocked out. And I got to tell you something, Wild Bill Tunney has thrown that car around with reckless abandon. It really is an amazing driving display. There's no conservation going on.
The question, though, becomes, how many times do you play with your brake there? How many times can you hit something on the carpet before it begins to be start to fail?
Well, Jonathan,
I'm not talking about failure. Now, Tunney gets through, but he right.
Tunney gets through as there was a huge collision of cars. Sizemore in that group, Laval in that group, Heiser's in that group. Heiser now motionless on the track. Heiser now able to get away. So hard fought Jeff Heiser involved in that big group of whatsoever. What did Wild Bill Tunney just flicked it left, right, got right around everybody.
It's got to be, those sort of things happen, and a scratch happens to your race car. You've got to really start to believe that this is Wild Bill Tunney's night.
Well, I'll tell you what, everything except for an anvil dropping out of the sky has happened to Wild Bill Tunney.
Or a piano.
Well, in the cartoons, it is always the piano that drops out of the sky as big traffic at the crossover. Wild Bill Tunney through the crossover has been carving his way through traffic. That is Ben Tunney, car number 14, parked at the west end of the race course. This is starting to look like our usual figure eight nights with just a few cars pulled off in strategic positions as our leaders continue to circulate.
Ben Tunney came right back on right in front of his dad.
Well, you know what he's going to do is he's going to try and set up the blocking sled, but I don't think that was a wise move. But we'll see. Ben Tunney, a young driver out there, probably trying to help his dad out. His dad says, I've been doing pretty well so far, and thanks for the help anyway. So Wild Bill Tunney now will put Morello yet another lap down. As Jonathan pointed out, some of these drivers now, despite the fact that they circulated the top five, because of the absolute incredible pace set by Wild Bill Tunney, many of these drivers are literally multiple laps down, Jonathan. It just makes the mind real. I know, when you keep track of stuff and you go laps down or so many laps down, Bruce Tunney, to put this in perspective for you, is Ronnie Rigdon and George Stute come together, spin harmlessly there, frankly, away from crossover traffic.
Rigdon and Stute, probably the fourth or fifth time that he's run out tonight. Ronnie Rigdon, of course, always
Laval having some problems getting off the track. And right now, off the track is kind of a good spot for Laval, who's had all kinds of problems as well.
Oh, and Wild Bill almost beat the Danny Turner. I didn't know if Danny saw him in corner number 3.
Well, Danny Turner doing a great job tonight. Wow, and take a look at Sutton. Sutton missed crossover traffic by literally a whisker, Jonathan. Sutton almost came to grief with the crossover. He's like that guy leaving the crowded theater. He had to turn sideways to get out of everyone's way.
Unbelievable. Now, talent these drivers have to avoid the kind of accidents.
Well, I just said it, Jonathan. R.J. Norton Jr. makes heavy contact.
They're going to drive away like nothing ever even happened.
R.J. Norton Jr. continues on as parts fly on the racing surface. Plenty of blue smoke, but everyone is still underway.
See the return of Jesse James to the racing surface. I gave some report that there was a left rear welding and green and the black flag out, I believe, for R.J. Norton Jr. for that bumper hanging off as far as it is.
I think you're right. R.J. Norton Jr. unfortunately dragging part of his race car, and that is the part of the race car that protects the fuel cell. So R.J. Norton Jr. getting the black flag for safety's sake. R.J. definitely in a precarious position with that bumper hanging the way it is. Ronnie Rigdon, car number 19, he's down at the north end of the racetrack out of harm's way. David Lee Byrne has been sitting there for quite a few laps. A lot of little noises, but David Lee Byrne's down there reading the magazine, Jonathan.
I wonder what magazine he's going to get. Speedsport News, perhaps?
I think he's reading all about racing while he's down there. So David Lee Byrne, David Lee Byrne actually has a box seat to tonight's race as he's been sitting there. Lots of traffic circulating around him. Our race leader has been putting on an amazing display here this evening. If he continues the way he does, an absolutely dominant display by Wild Bill Tunney. Wild Bill Tunney, incidents on the track, off the track, is probably literally come into contact with everybody he's raced against here tonight. But Wild Bill has managed to keep the car pointed in the right direction as he fearlessly makes his way through the crossover, lap after lap. Wild Bill Tunney has certainly made the Tunney name proud here tonight. Jonathan, we are approaching the 45-minute mark. It is hard to believe that we have gone through over 2 hours of racing, almost 2 hours and 15 minutes worth of racing here. And it is really,
number 4. So we'll bring out the pace truck, slow the field down, and we will see what happens as a lot of cars take advantage, and will take advantage of this late race caution.
Our audience, too, is somewhat taking a pit stop as well, Jonathan, because of the excitement that you generate with this racing. You sit there in your seat, and the tension builds up just watching the race. One can imagine what it's like in the cockpit of these race cars. Very interesting what may be going on behind the wheel of the number 4 machine. As you've said about leading this race, you have got to be ultra tough. You've got to be ultra strong. And you've got to continue to race at a high level during the entire 3 hours. Bruce Tunney has done all that and more. Fatigue at this point has to be setting in. But can you imagine the elation, not only of leading this race, but dominating the field? So I'm going to guess that is that extra boost that keeps Bruce Tunney, or excuse me, Wild Bill Tunney, very up in the seat of his race car, as he has not only led this race, but dominated this race, Jonathan.
I believe Wild Bill Tunney Jr. probably glad to see this caution. They had gone about 20 to 25 minutes straight there without a break. And the pace that Wild Bill Tunney Jr. is putting out here as the field receives the one to go signal. Wild Bill Tunney Jr. is 4 cars ahead of George Sutton, who is 1 lap down. So still, again, we should not see any. We would like to see maybe if George Sutton could get around Wild Bill Tunney Jr., catch another caution, and maybe work his way through the field. Because like we said, you never know what might happen in the World Championship. Green flag coming out. We're back racing at the Marion K. Spicer World Championship.
The World Championship.
Oh, hard into the wall is Fred Bear Jr. in a car number 1. Unbelievable how hard Fred Bear Jr. hit the wall.
Fred Bear Jr. makes hard wall contact south end of the racetrack, and he's not going anywhere.
And bring out the hill once again. So unfortunately, not enough time for George Sutton to get time to challenge to get back around the leader, Wild Bill Tunney. But Fred Bear Jr., a hard hit into the number 1 wall, into corner number 1 wall. We hope he's okay. Speedrome safety trucks making their way now to the disabled machine of Bear.
Well, as you said, Fred Bear made very hard contact with the wall down at the south end of the racetrack. Now, Jonathan, you are right. Not only does Sutton need to get around Wild Bill, but then would have to circulate entirely around the racetrack and then pass him again to win this race. So it does. It's kind of like a Chinese puzzle in your brain as you try and figure out how all that could come to be. So Sutton would have to battle through the field, pass Tunney, and then come up through the field and pass him again as we call for the ambulance. So the ambulance will make its way onto the racing surface just to make absolutely certain that Fred Bear Jr. is okay. Fred Bear, who is an ASA veteran and has many laps of competition here at the Speedrome, is a very tough driver. And even though this is a smaller track, Jonathan, you can still generate some tremendous speed and hit the wall with wild abandon, which is exactly what happened to Fred Bear Jr. As you said, once he got pushed, he hit the wall pretty hard.
Well, we don't want to speculate as to the severity or lack thereof of the injury. Definitely want to take a precautionary measure with any type of hard wall contact to give a good looking over to Fred Bear Jr.
Well, to give you an idea, Jonathan, on Jonathan Bird's night at the races, we had a couple of hard wall contacts, and it can happen here at this racetrack, and it is always good to have a well-equipped safety crew as well as paramedics that can give that attention that drivers need in these instances. Thankfully, this has not happened too often this evening. We haven't had to summon the ambulance, but we do this time with the wall contact from Fred Bear, car number 94. On his very own lead lap, it is Wild Bill Tunney, car number 4, the Remax Advantage G&M Trucking Special. He has, of course, pitted just shortly after the halfway point where he refueled and presumably put at least a tire or two on the car. Has really done an absolutely amazing job at carving his way through traffic. And Jonathan, I think it's been one of those situations where certainly drivers haven't just let him by, but when they do see that Wild Bill is in their group, they've at least given him racing room. You would hate to think now that after being so dominant for so long, that he would be taken out by almost a silly racing incident with a back marker maybe not being aware that your race leader was right there.
Every driver throughout the evening has kept their eye on that scoreboard, and for the last hour and a half or so, that big number 4 has occupied the first position. We're getting some late word now that there may be a fuel strategy employed by George Sutton where he may have to dash in for a splash of fuel. We'll keep an eye on that. It may be for not him running as well as he is. He's going to have to make another dash back into the pits for a splash and go of fuel.
Well,
to allow Wild Bill Tunney Jr. to get away. Of course, Wild Bill's got to be good on fuel. He pitted well over halfway of this race.
Well, as you said, Jonathan, this is certainly one of those situations where anything can happen. We have contact this evening with the scorers who have, frankly, a very difficult job. I myself could not score this race. They are the unsung heroes of the World Figure 8 Championship. We've been getting updates from the scorers throughout the evening. At one point in the evening, one of the scorers rocked back in his chair, Jonathan, and said, "That George Sutton, he's got the field covered. Why? He's good to go on fuel. He's got tires. He has everything he needs." Well, yes and maybe no. So George Sutton, who tactically put himself in a very good situation and has been a strong runner-up throughout the evening, still a lap down to Wild Bill Tunney. If he has to make a dash in for fuel, Jonathan, that could change things. We believe that he's at least a couple laps, if not 3 or 4 laps, in front of Doug Gregg in the number 33 machine.
But you would think that this type of long yellow, it may have been a chance for him to go ahead and go into the pit, so possibly as well. Maybe that strategy is for naught, but...
Well, think about this as well. How difficult is it to tell exactly how much fuel you have? These cars are set up with a very minimalist set of gauges. So is there a fuel pressure gauge or a fuel gauge itself? Not sure how that car is set up. I'm not absolutely certain I'd want to be behind the wheel not knowing my fuel situation. So that certainly adds to the chess game that is the World Figure 8 Championship. We're not sure about George Sutton's fuel situation. We do know, or at least we think we know, we can't make any assumption at this point, that Wild Bill Tunney should be good to go. Wild Bill Tunney, who pitted well after the halfway point and has been circulating here under yellow. We, at least as far as we know, Wild Bill Tunney is good to go on fuel. Also, we happen to know that Wild Bill Tunney is good for a lot of other things, meaning coming together with cars at the crossover, or being bumped from behind, or slamming into the car in front of him. We know that all those things are good for Wild Bill Tunney. Those apparently caused Wild Bill Tunney no problems whatsoever, Jonathan. Now, our other competitors can't say the same thing.
That's right. 23 cars, now 24 cars on the racing surface. Attrition starting to take its toll. The field has been given 1 lap to go, and the leader, Wild Bill Tunney Jr., will lead them to the green as we'll resume with 35 minutes remaining in this race on lap 348.
How about that, Jonathan, as we head into the almost final 30 minutes. The green flag flies once again. Wild Bill Tunney charging hard into the turn complex at the south end of the racetrack. Alongside him, though several laps down, his fellow competitor, R.J. Norton Jr. Wild Bill Tunney, so dominant this evening on the restart. Having some problems, though, getting around R.J. Norton Jr. R.J. Norton Jr., a very proud competitor, a guy who sat on the pole here previously for the World Figure 8 Championship, as now Wild Bill has clear track in front of him as he gets through the crossover. Wild Bill Tunney is through the crossover, and traffic already a problem at the crossover. So keep 666 machine, as featured on Monster Garage. Jesse James, our celebrity entrant to tonight's World Figure 8 Championship, a race that's been dominated by Tunney's. The first part of the race dominated by Bruce Tunney. The second part of the race dominated by Wild Bill Tunney. Wild Bill Tunney, like a machine, just keeps clicking the laps off, not letting up for anything at all. Here's the scenario. The runner-up is George Sutton, car number 6. You see Sutton and Wild Bill circulating very closely together on the racetrack in yellow.
We'll get word from race control maybe what this caution is for. Maybe the Ronnie Rigdon machine being motionless around the fourth turn area.
Yeah, we're not sure right now, but they definitely called for a yellow flag. So as we approach this 30 minutes to go mark, here is the scenario completed right before the yellow flag came out. You do see George Sutton circulating right behind your race leader. You see Sutton and you think, well, gosh, all Sutton's got to do is get a break or two, pass the leader. Zero problems.
I think there was some debris on the race course in turn number 1. We had our Speedrome officials clear that debris. Now the field gets the 1 to go signal.
So heads up for the hardest working short track crew in America. Spots the debris problem, gets the debris off the racetrack, and racing will be able to resume here as the pace truck pulls back into the safety box, Jonathan. But anyway, the scenario, as I was saying, I keep interrupting myself now. But it just looks like, well, gee, if George Sutton gets on the gas, can he get around Wild Bill? Well, he's a lap down, so that certainly complicates things. The green flag flies for that very brief yellow flag interval. Once again, Wild Bill Tunney head of the field alongside R.J. Norton. Some sporadic traffic in that crossover. Ronnie Rigdon has especially had some problems at the crossover, but has wisely stayed out of everyone's way. Wild Bill Tunney, R.J. Norton is right beside him, though R.J. is several laps down. Tunney now inside the 30-minute mark. There is less than 30 minutes to go in this World Figure 8 Championship, and cars spawn going every which way. One of those cars is Christopher Green.
One is
Calvin Crane involved in that incident as well. So Crane and Green are completely tangled up with each other, and that will probably bring out the yellow flag, as those cars in a pretty precarious position right there in what would be turn 3 on the Figure 8 course. So they literally are locked together, Jonathan. That is Calvin Crane in 4C locked with Christopher Green in car number 52G. So obviously when you get the cars locked together, it's like the push me pull you effect. It's hard to agree on what direction you might want to go in. So we'll send our Speedrome safety crew down there to unbuckle those cars and get this field going again. Now, we talked earlier about a possible fuel situation with George Sutton. There is some word, or at least there is some conjecture, that perhaps George Sutton, car number 6, who finds himself in the runner-up position, close geographically to Wild Bill Tunney, but a lap down to Wild Bill. There was a conjecture, Jonathan, that maybe there might have to be an additional fuel stop for George Sutton. Certainly these extra yellows here at the end of this race, especially with the fact that we have to bring out the ultra big wrecker for this big old wreck. The conjecture might be, at least at this point, that just maybe, these yellow flag laps will help preserve and conserve the fuel aboard the number 6 racing machine. So maybe Sutton may have benefited from these numbers of yellows.
I think you're right, Jay Baker. I think that with these number of yellows we've had in there in the late going, that any concern about fuel have now gone away, and the George Sutton machine, the 6 machine, looks like it will be good to go, and it just cannot catch a break on these yellows to get around the leader, Bill Tunney Jr.
Well, we've talked about this a couple times just because we want to lay out the scenarios for you, the race fan, as we approach the end of this race. we wish it were a situation that these two cars were going to battle it out final lap. But Wild Bill has been so dominant, and as Jonathan pointed out, has kept that intensity level up to such a high degree that Sutton actually would have to make not only a pass for the lead, but then work his way up through an entire lap. And from what we've seen tonight, unless Wild Bill has some kind of mechanical problem, that just may not happen. Now, Jonathan, I thought at one point we might put 450 laps on the board because of just the absolute torrid pace. The yellows have certainly slowed us down in that pursuit. That's probably okay. 450 laps is a lot of laps to put on the tires and the race driver himself. So maybe this championship is played out exactly the way that we thought that it might. As the Rockets car completely bashed in on the left-hand side, as you know, Jonathan, throughout the afternoon. We went through an afternoon where Rodney the Rocket Sizemore went out and set a couple different fast times. He even beat his own pole speed, putting it out of reach for any of his competitors. And how the Rocket, the huge crowd response. Lots of Rodney Sizemore fans here at this racetrack. His father inducted into the Speedrome Hall of Fame this year. The Rocket's a big favorite out here. And how that dream goes from sitting on the pole, Jonathan, to being involved in one of our big crossover incidents and spending an extended length of time in the pit lane. And that has been the saga of Rodney Sizemore. So Sizemore will go home tired and disappointed after this evening instead of holding a big world championship trophy. And did I mention, Jonathan, and perhaps I've been remiss, that the winner also gets a $10,000 check?
Nonetheless, $10,000 in title of world champion to be won for an entire season of racing here at the Blossom Chevy Speedrome. Wild Bill Tunney Jr. has been waiting 25 years, and as the seconds continue to tick off the clock, we are now at 25 minutes and 15 seconds. I've got to imagine Wild Bill Tunney Jr. has got to be thinking, keep on ticking, because he's getting ever so close to tasting the victory and being crowned world champion here at the Blossom Chevy Speedrome for the Marion K. Spices World Championship.
Well, it would be spectacular for Wild Bill Tunney, certainly. The amazing success that he has had here at the Speedrome. But you know, his name conspicuously missing from the World Figure 8 Championship rolls. Wild Bill has done everything but win a World Championship. Tonight certainly looks to be his night. Jonathan, it is hard to believe we're at the 24-minute mark, or approaching that 24-minute mark. We have put 369 laps on the board, and we are getting ready to restart this race. There will be clear racetrack in front of Wild Bill Tunney. Wild Bill Tunney, Sutton slots in right behind him. Tunney is your race leader on his own lead lap. Wild Bill Tunney, Sutton is right behind him. Sutton being shown second on the scoreboard, but Sutton is a complete lap down to Wild Bill Tunney. We are under the 24-minute mark. The minutes continue to tick by as Wild Bill
Bill continues to pace this field.
Absolutely amazing. In fact, it seems like no matter what happens on this racetrack, Wild Bill Tunney still keeps up his amazing pace. And as you see Tunney right now in very heavy traffic and moving through that traffic really with seemingly no problem whatsoever, Jonathan.
With over 2.5 hours completed, Jay, this track's got to be a lot more tacky, a lot looser. As we see Jesse, he is going to pull off into the pit area. Sparks flying behind the car. It could be the end of Jesse James for the evening.
It was great that Jesse did.
Oh, another big crash in the middle. John Laval and Donnie Garrigus, or Jeff Heiss and Ricky Dietz together. Oh my goodness.
Everybody's in there, including R.J. Norton. And once again, who do we see come streaming through there as if he's on a Sunday drive down the Parkway? Is Wild Bill Tunney. So lots of action now. And you got to say, Jonathan, I think you brought up a great point. This track certainly is extremely greasy at this standpoint. Plus, driver fatigue has to be a factor now as these guys nearing the end of this 3-hour event. What has been outstanding is I'm going to imagine a lot of these guys had no idea Wild Bill Tunney was going to be able to come up with this kind of a pace. It certainly has got to have tired out a lot of these drivers.
We think earlier in the race how Bruce and Bill running together side by side, bumper to bumper, to start this incredible pace. But Wild Bill continues it after Bruce's earlier problems.
Yeah, Bruce was very, very dominant in the first half of this race, and now Wild Bill just picked up right where his brother left off. He seems to really show no signs of letting up, and he ordinarily you would say to do well in this race, you're going to have to avoid incidents. He has been involved in a couple where he's been hit, including one at the crossover. I mean, that number 4 has to have been built by the same company that built the vault at Fort Knox, because he just keeps on going. Nothing seems to stop, and as you can see on the track, a lot of blue smoke coming up from guys having to check up. It's at a point right now where fatigue comes in. We've always said during the figure eight, Jonathan, you got to watch the traffic in front of you, the traffic behind you, and then certainly the traffic at the crossover. So you literally have all kinds of inputs coming at you in a full 360-degree diorama. Now, as Wild Bill gets around one of our Florida competitors, though, guys from Florida have been tough this evening.
That's right, and John Laval back out there after some earlier problems. He got his car repaired, and he loves this race. He loves this sport. John Laval, one of the great guys. Oh, a little bit of problem. Danny Turner slow coming out of the 4th corner.
Wow, Turner got slowed. Was it Garrigus that hit him?
I think so.
I think you're right, and Garrigus ended up peeling off the sheet metal off the whole right side of the car, and then who comes through there? Hey, it's the sheriff, Wild Bill Tunney. It seems like nothing slows him down. He's moving around Casey White right now. Remember, every time he goes around a competitor, Jonathan, that's just one more lap down these guys fall. So if any of these guys had any hope at all of maybe piecing something together, making a late race run, it's really now almost out of the question, unless, of course, Wild Bill breaks down. It's not over until it's over.
That's right, and as we move into the final 16, 17 minutes of this race, we have Wild Bill Tunney Jr. still your leader. He has a lap lead over second place George Sutton. Doug Gregg had a good run for him. He's in 3rd, about 5 to 6 laps down. The Wild Bill Tunney coming to complete another lap.
It's interesting too with Wild Bill. With all these cars, we've got a couple of cars, somewhat stopped at the crossover or checked up or slowed. It's real interesting how he's able to even have the vision to move through this, as we now see Donnie Garrigus making his way off the race facility. But I mean, how does he even pick his way through here, Jonathan? That really is the question. Here's a guy who's been at this now nearly 3 hours, and he's as sharp as he was when this race started.
Absolutely, and what we know is that once race car drivers get in the rhythm and these long green flag runs, the fatigue factor kind of is a little bit lessened, because you just get you get into a rhythm, you're hitting your marks, you're getting around slower traffic. It's not like a 25 or 50 lap sprint race.
Well, I tell you what, Wild Bill here has just been absolutely amazing. As we see him working right behind his son, Ben Tunney, in the what is a very famous race number around these parts. And he moves around. Ben gives him some racing room. But yeah, Wild Bill, now do you think, certainly with the pace that he's had, Jonathan, what do you think about fatigue or fuel or tires? All all these seem to be sort of falling in his way, but is this going to last for the rest of the race?
Absolutely. This race usually can be run with just one well-timed pit stop. If you can make your pit stop a little bit after the halfway point, or as we saw Bill do it just a little bit before, he knows he can go the rest of the way. His tires, obviously you can see he's doing so well through the traffic, not a concern. Fuel shouldn't be a concern as well, and as we move into the last few moments of this race, Wild Bill, barring anything unforeseen, looks like he may have it. 25 years in the making, he's been wanting to win this event.
But I just find it absolutely amazing because there's been plenty of guys having trouble all over this racetrack. Wild Bill looks like he literally is just out for a spin, and I know, we've been going on Tunney this, Tunney that, but the guy has been absolutely amazing. And frankly, the crossover traffic, I do not know how any of these guys are picking their way through it. Wild Bill just continues to carve through the pack. We've been here for plenty of 25 and 50 lap feature races, and these guys have had trouble when they hit packs of traffic. Wild Bill just carves through the pack like a guy going through a Thanksgiving turkey.
And it's unbelievable that they still go 3 wide into the corner. That's Wild Bill getting around Jeremy Miller, the Flat Rock champion, and these guys really know that they've got to keep going. As we have a spin, Don Eislick spins out, coming out of the second corner.
Sloan having some troubles as well in the number 44 machine. So yes, Eislick there putting up some disco smoke and gets himself going in the right direction. And once again, who do we see? He's just out on another drive. He is, of course, Wild Bill Tunney is one of our Florida guys here slowing?
I think he may be starting to encounter some steering problems, some suspension problems. That car's been hit an awful lot, and metal can only take so much pounding.
Yeah, you are correct, and we've delivered some real pounding at the crossover. Though I have really thought in this race, but I think it's a testament to the skill level that we would have a number of incidents at the crossover. It seems like we've had more incidents exiting the turns, either at the north end or the south end of this racetrack. Plenty of activity, but somehow Wild Bill Tunney just continues to pick his way not only through traffic but through the crossover. Seems to have really no problem whatsoever.
And in front of this standing room only crowd, ladies and gentlemen, over 10,000 people have converged on the corner of Brookville Road and Kitley Avenue to see the World Championship. And I've got to tell you, this many cars running this late in the race is a testament to the popularity of the sport, the popularity of this event, and how much these drivers want to race. As the track looks like somebody's putting some sort of fluid down the track, you can see the bright mark all the way through the south end of the track.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be affecting Wild Bill much at all, as we have a lot of stationary cars on this racetrack right now. We are nearing the 10 minutes to go mark, Jonathan, so really this race is Wild Bill Tunney's, I think, to lose at this point. Obviously the complexion could change at any moment, but nothing really seems to be slowing this number 4 car down at all, as he is in very heavy traffic right behind Danny Turner right now and seems to just keep piling it on. The nice thing is he's getting a lot of racing room from fellow competitors, which is great to see the sportsmanship out there.
And just like always, you are always in this race, no matter if you're first, last, or in the middle, you're in traffic the whole time, and it's always the way you get through that traffic that will determine your success in the World Championship.
Well, what's interesting, Jonathan, is these cars are not allowed by rules to have any kind of a radio link with the pits, so it really is just the driver, not only against traffic and track conditions, but really kind of against himself, as I'm going to guess there's a lot of self-dialogue going on in these drivers' heads. I would love if we could somehow download it onto a computer to see what's going through the mind of Wild Bill Tunney, because it has just been an event-filled and with serious competition 3-hour championship. And here's a guy that is going on, as you said, to a potential world championship. This is something that he has wanted his long racing career.
It always seemed like he was in a position somewhere, in that first hour, halfway through, that something would happen that would always be a bad luck. And the yellow flag has come out, a yellow flag could be some debris on the course. We're not getting an indication as to why. The pace truck will pick up the leader, Wild Bill Tunney Jr., with just about 11 minutes to go in this event.
Well, I'll tell you what, the yellows at this point have to somewhat help Wild Bill. It gives him a situation then to get the field behind him. Like you pointed out, give us a chance to make sure this track is completely clear and safe to go. And then that will give him clear track in front of him for the restart. Of course, it will not be long with the size of this field. It'll be immediately back in traffic. Again, as we can see, even on the pace lap, everybody trying to sort themselves through. As Jonathan said, you're never out of this till you're out of it. But to give you an idea of how fortunes go, last year's reigning World Figure 8 champion, Curtis McMurtry, not really a factor in this, Jonathan. Early on, I think he kind of kept up, but there was an absolute wicked pace set by both Tunney brothers. First, it was Bruce Tunney, who had his unfortunate incident with Rodney Sizemore and was forced to exit this race. And then, of course, Wild Bill Tunney takes up the reins. The pace, frankly, has just laid waste to fellow competitors. I mean, these guys are great drivers. It's not like, hey, the Tunneys were great drivers and everybody else, just got pulled out of the stands. These guys are some of the top flight figure 8 drivers, the best the Speedrome has to offer. And Wild Bill Tunney has laid this competition to waste.
Well, we're back to green flag at a brand new racetrack in front of Wild Bill Tunney Jr. 10 minutes to go, 10 minutes left in the 3-hour World Championship. Wild Bill Tunney Jr. is going to be taken off. He sees the scoreboard, he knows, but he's been in this position before. We're just being so close to victory. It had been snatched from his hands. We'll see if he can hold on.
Yeah, you got to tell you something. With 10 minutes to go, talk about self-dialogue. Here's a guy here who wants everything to hold together. They always talk about in racing that drivers hear things differently in the car. Now, I know, Jonathan, you have some racing experience. The races you won, did the cars start making funnier sounds? I've always wondered that, because that's what they say. You start to really listen to that car the last few laps, certainly in this particular case, the last 10 minutes of this race.
Well, when I am in the race car and have a lead with about 5 or 6 laps to go, you just start to wonder, and you start to feel, am I getting looser? Am I getting tighter? What was that noise in the right rear? What's going on? And you just start maybe overthinking. What you have to do is just clear your head and say, hit your marks, hit your marks. And I think that's what Wild Bill Tunney is doing there. Wild Bill Tunney coming through the south end, the north end, moving his way to complete another lap in this World Championship. Unbelievable.
And you can certainly see just how bunched up traffic is behind him. I tell you another story that's been, I think, almost borders on heartbreaking, is how fast George Sutton has been the last half of this season. And Sutton, who had was tremendously competitive all evening long, the pace that Tunney set down just absolutely, I mean, it just withered the field. And Sutton was one of those guys who never has been able to get back on the lead lap and battle Wild Bill Tunney. Wild Bill, once again, in very heavy traffic. We knew that he would be. He's there getting through the field there with Jeremy the Frog Miller and some of our out-of-town racers. Wild Bill, as we near the end of this event, he is so very close, Jonathan, but in a lot of ways somewhat far away, because, as you said, sometimes certain victory has been snatched out of the hands of competitors. Wild Bill has to be thinking, let's hold on, let's try and win this event.
And you see now that Wild Bill Tunney and George Sutton have been meeting in the crossover some, as we're looking at Jeff Heiser running with the dangerous one, Danny Turner. These guys, longtime veterans of the Blossom Chevy Speedrome, and they're racing through another event. Of course, Jeff Heiser won last night's qualifying race, his first figure 8 victory in many, many years.
Well, the great thing is none of these guys have stopped, and Jeff Heiser, we've kind of dubbed Hard Luck Jeff Heiser. In fact, I even had a chance to talk to him before the race, and he goes, yeah, I have had some tough luck. Some guys get a little bit mad when you dub them Hard Luck, but he goes, no, I've had some tough luck. But none of these guys have stopped, and that has been a real testament to the competitive spirit here at the Speedrome. Certainly, Jonathan, with the qualifying races that we had, qualifications themselves, and then this the Super Bowl of figure eight racing, you have to tip your racing hat to each and every one of these competitors. Right now, of course, our attention goes back to Wild Bill Tunney. All eyes on the house. I believe that is David Lee Bird right in front of him, and then Donnie Sloan, who had spun earlier. And once again, you see, with almost the relative ease, first of all, the drivers are giving him room to race, which is great, but the relative ease that Wild Bill is having in cutting through traffic, it is literally going through this traffic like a hot knife through butter, and it's just been amazing.
And I believe, he's got to keep going. He's all he sees on that scoreboard is the number 4, then the number 6, and number 33. He really has no idea if we know that George Sutton is at least 1, if not 2 laps down. So he's got to keep going. If he knew that he had a 1 or 2 lap lead with only 6 minutes to go, would I be going as fast? Would I be taking chances unnecessarily? I don't know, but you just don't know. There's no communication. I don't know if they have a signboard in the pits letting Bill know. But
what a great observation, Jonathan, because you're right. In any other kind of a race, in a conventional oval, you have a pit crew hanging a signboard that may say, hey, you're position 1 and you're 2 laps up on the field. You might want to slow down. Don't take as many chances. Wild Bill, and wow, we do have
that's Ben Tunney.
That is Ben Tunney.
And Mark Morello.
The son of Wild Bill. We are closing in, Jonathan. We are right now almost at the 5 minutes to go mark. So really
2 hours and 55 minutes. Still the tour pace being put out there by the leader, Wild Bill Tunney Jr.
But yes, you raise a great point. Do you have to continue to try as hard? It seems like almost like a wind-up toy. Wild Bill only has 1 speed, so they wound him up and set him out on this racetrack. And not only has he done this from the sheer speed angle, but he's done it with a lot of finesse, Jonathan, because he's at a stage right now where he really is cutting his way through traffic. I would imagine at this point, thankfully, competitors very aware that Wild Bill is the leader. Why? Because the number 4 car has passed him more times than they can care to count, but they do seem to be giving him some room to race now as we are inside the 5-minute window. I think even the announcers might be getting a little bit tired here as we approach the 3-hour mark, Jonathan.
The emotions that's from the gigantic opening and the thrill of all 28 motors firing, the fireworks at the beginning of the race itself, the close call through the crossover, the action that's happened all throughout the track. I know my heart has been beating non-stop. Well, I hope it wouldn't stop because that would be a problem.
That might be a problem, yes. Well, but you raise a great point. And how many Tunney fans do we have in the Speedrome audience? And that's what's been great, week after week. Do the Tunneys have great racing pedigree? Oh, yes, they do.
Oh, and a spin coming out of 2. That's Don Eastlick again. And he is turned around. And then once again, he's going the wrong way on the racetrack. Under 3 minutes now.
Yeah, Eastlick, one of our ultra-tough out-of-town competitors, having a rough day. You got to imagine at this point, Jonathan, even the potential, frankly, for these guys having tires that are probably just absolutely shot, etc., plus fatigue comes in. And was that stop?
Greg the Hammer Stewart, he has stuck in turn number 3. His car has stalled, and with the race being such a near completion, we don't know. I mean, will they go yellow? It's going to be hard to get the field patched back up. They're going to leave him there, Jay.
Yeah, I guess now everyone knows he's there. Perhaps being bolted into the race car there is probably the safest place to be, and probably for the best of this, as we are so very close to the end, Jonathan. We are nearing the 3-minute to go mark here. So incredibly close to the end of this race. This race, of course, as we have said throughout the event, really has just been a domination from Wild Bill Tunney, lap after lap. As Jonathan said, he just continually hits his marks, has been carving his way through traffic. For the most part, has been avoiding crossover collisions, but he's not even immune to that, yet he just keeps on going through this field. And we clearly see that there's even some close calls at the crossover this late in the race.
That's without a doubt, as we are now with 2 minutes to go, 2 minutes for the man that's been waiting 25 years to get into this victory lane. Wild Bill Tunney Jr. has just about 7 or 8 laps to complete.
Yeah, it's amazing that we have gotten ourselves to this point. Every one of these drivers all season long had looked forward to this World Figure 8 Championship. The early part of this race, absolutely.
Whoa! And R.J. Norton almost gets in a crossover collision as the leader gets through the crossover, avoiding the obstacle of Greg Stute in the north end of the track.
Norton, certainly one of the pre-race favorites, has had an event-filled race in the number 69 blue and orange machine, and as you just said, Jonathan, probably avoided a big disaster there. But back to my earlier point, every one of these drivers all season long look forward to this World Championship. The best drivers in the Midwest.
And there's 1 minute to go, one final minute. I can just imagine what is going through the mind of the man who's piloting the number 4 machine.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jonathan, everybody is on their feet in this standing room only crowd here at the Speedrome. We've got stopped cars, we've got slowed cars, and frankly, it's still mayhem at the crossover, but that has not deterred nor even slowed down the man who will probably eventually win the World Championship. In front of him, just a few more trips through that dangerous crossover zone, and Wild Bill Tunney can add something to his resume that he has waited 25 years to put on, Jonathan, a World Figure 8 driving championship.
So much blood, sweat, and tears through the years this man has come through, and we anticipate that this could be the last lap as the 3-hour time limit has come to an end.
Yes, here we are. This could be the lap. They throw the checkered flag, and this guy will be very, very glad to see it. After 25 long years, a man who is now getting the reward he has sought for so very long, the winner of this World Figure 8 Championship, Wild Bill Tunney, and he is in an ecstatic victory. Don't it? Look at the blue smoke. You can just imagine the jubilation.
How excited it is for Wild Bill Tunney Jr. getting the congratulations from his fellow competitors. 25 years, a quarter of a century waiting for this moment. He is the 2003 World Figure 8 champion here at the Blossom Chevrolet Speedrome.
Boy, I tell you what, that is just great. Flagman comes down, hands him the checkered flag. He has to just be overjoyed. This is something that he's wanted for so very long. The Tunney family with amazing success. This has been a great year too, Jonathan, as Wild Bill's son, as well as the son of Bruce Tunney, have both had their rookie seasons this year. You know, it was kind of a Tunney-oriented season with so many great Tunneys.
And what
he's going to go drive off. He's so happy he's going to drive out onto 465 and celebrate his victory.
That'll be a long victory lap, but he's going to see the people that have made this victory happen, because without the people in the pit area, had that great pit stop, only lost 1 lap in the pits under that caution, and he's going to say thank you so much to his crew.
There he is, Wild Bill Tunney Jr., the winner of the Marion K. Spices World Figure 8 Championship. The 27th annual and the celebration is underway. Wild Bill Tunney Jr., congratulations. So many years you have run this race. You have run it, you've come close, and there always seemed to be a problem. A dominating performance. How does it feel to have the title now as world champion? It hasn't sunk into well yet. I'll let you know in a week or two. How were you able to keep the car underneath you with so many incidents? You hit people in the crossover, in corners, you were hit from behind, you were bumped from the front. Amazing performance to keep this car in front of you and win by over a lap. Well, the car was great. I mean, I know I was going to have a car to beat last night. We maybe weren't the fastest to qualify, but when we got running, the tires got old, we were good. At what point did you know that this was your race? When they waved the checkered flag. Never ran through your mind until that checkered flag flew. I've been close too many times. Your thoughts on the the misfortune of your brother Bruce going into trying to make his pit stop running into the back of Rocky Sizemore. What were your thoughts then?
Not darn, you know, and I thought he was stalled, and I was trying to motion the pit to push him to get him started. Didn't look like he'd start, and but I don't know what's wrong with him. I'd like to know that. I haven't heard yet. I hope he's okay, and I hope Fred's all right. You know.
It's taken 25 years for you to get into this, to be the world champion. Did you ever really think it was going to happen?
25 years ago.
I know you got a great family, sponsor, and crew. You've got a lot of people to say thank you for this world championship victory.
Yeah, I sure do. I got to thank Mike and T. Hamlin. They've helped me so much. Big Beast Towing, Jim Jones Racing Engines, Mark and Connie Howard, Remax Advantage, J. Greg Allen Builders, Custom Masonry, Big Beast Towing. So many people helping out all the time. You know, Jim's had the motors good. Mike and T have been helping put the money in the car, and that helps out. Ron Kozlowski, he's my right hand. I don't know what I'd do without him and Ron to helping out. And poor Dad. I got to thank Dad. We've invaded his house. All these years I've been doing this, we've been doing it at Dad's house. I got to thank him so much. I wish Mom was here. I miss that so much. Deb's here. Deb always helps us run for us. And someone that always forgets that's kind of neglected has put up with it for a long time. That's my wife, Roseanne. I love her so much. Thanks, sweetie. She's my angel. And how about the kid? The kid was great, wasn't he? Not qualified Dad tonight. I told you I'd beat you. I had to beat you. They were great. All the boys working on the cars. All three of my boys, 11-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds running. They're working on this car. I'd also like to thank the Cohen family for the opportunity to race at this facility. We've enjoyed that a lot. One of my first big sponsors was Jake Cohen. You know, I'll never forget that. You know, Jeff and Kenny Corvette here to help us tonight. They helped me for years and years, and so many people through the years that, you know, I've outlasted most of them. But, you know, I don't know what to say. I'm really excited. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank the fans. I've had quite a few of them over the years, you know. Brian's made quite a few times. You know, something looks like it's going to go good, something happened. Tonight, we can get the rhythm, and at times, you know, something happened, we can get our rhythm broken. I just try to settle down and get back into it. We were good then, so I thought it was a pretty great race.
You had a great pit stop early on. You never lost the lead when you went to the pits. That your crew is probably outstanding work.
I told you these guys are great, you know. I mean, they've done a good job. Jim was helping, Ron, Donnie, you know, all these guys. Bill B, right there. He's my oldest crew member right here. He's been here just almost as long as Bill Becker. Helped so much. Yeah, man, everybody knows him, you know. And a new guy started helping us out. Ray started helping us this week, so he was changing tires, and, you know, they've done a great job, so.
Well, let me bring in Scott Reed here with the championship trophy presentation, guys. Look out. Let's make some way for the cameras and stuff. Scott Reed from Marion K. Spice is the presenting sponsor to present the championship trophy.
On behalf of Marion K. Spice, we're very proud to be here tonight and present you the Grand Champion Trophy. There you go. Congratulations.
And now the championship check. Bill Tunney Jr., $10,000. He wins. $10,000 here, Bill. Get your check for $10,000. Winner of the 27th annual Marion K. Spice's World Championship. How about that?
I don't think that's going to fit through the drive-up. I'm going to take it inside.
Make sure you endorse it with a really big Sharpie, too.
Yeah, that's what I have to do.
Let me put this trophy right here in front. Has this been the greatest race that you've ever run?
It's been the best.
Have you really ever thought, the guys that you competed against, was there a lot more courtesy as the race went on? It seemed like every time you came to the crossover, guys were lifting, giving you plenty of room.
A lot of guys were lifting, giving me plenty of, you know, and that was real appreciated once they got down. I had a couple guys that was a thorn in my side all night, and you know, that happens. I mean, it's a race, and ain't nobody supposed to give you nothing. Any break that someone will give you, that's sure appreciated. So,
one more time, ladies and gentlemen, here